Hi, I'm Pocket Sun, and this is how you sell without selling out. Roger Stat.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rogers Healy, and welcome to Rogers That, a podcast dedicated to selling without selling out. Today, we have someone who sold a bunch all over the world. Right now, she's in Asia. It's like 10 o'clock at night. I'd already be falling asleep, but that's how dedicated she is to being a trailblazer. She's a venture capitalist. She's an entrepreneur. She's changing the game for women and underrepresented founders. I had the pleasure of meeting my friend Pocket Sun through a TV show called Entrepreneur Elevator Pitch. As expected, Pocket stole the show. They've already kicked me off, and they're just changing the show name to Pocket's Elevator, which is going to be a really small elevator. But we're going to invest in that elevator by the end of this podcast. We met in Florida, became quick friends. She has spunk, she has personality, and she's on a mission. And a fun fact that I learned, maybe a not so fun fact, but 49% of business owners are females, and less than 2% receive venture funding. As a girl dad, as a champion for women, as a guy that respects the power that is a woman, I love having conversations with people like Pocket because she finds a way to empower women literally all over the world. Since I saw her, she's been in LA, she's been in Florida, she's been in Canada, she's over in Hong Kong right now. And she does it all. And she does it with a big smile on her face. And I think that that's really important for the world of investing because most investors aren't happy. With all that being said, I'm excited to welcome my friend, I would say this morning and this evening, Pocket Sun to the podcast. So Pocket, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Where are you right now?
So I just arrived in Hong Kong very early this morning after a 14 plus hour flight from LA.
My gosh. And you found a way to make the podcast. So, sorry. who is Pocket Sun? You've got such a fascinating background. Let us learn a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so by definition, I am an investor, a fund manager, and entrepreneur. When I was 24, I started my entrepreneurial journey in LA, and therefore the name SoGal came along from Southern California. And I started a mission to really support the world of women entrepreneurship and empower women on all three fronts. I wanted them to get funding as entrepreneurs. I want them to to have decision making power as investors, as VCs, and I also want women to be making generational wealth as LPs in funds that are like ours. So I've been on that mission for the past 10 years. And yeah, it's been a whirlwind. We've been able to invest in over 150 companies. Five of them have become over, $1 billion in valuations. We've invested all over the world. We've built an incredible family of LPs, which now you are a part of. And in this process, I got to connect with different startup ecosystems all around. I've lived across the world. And yeah, I think of myself as a global citizen, as a healer as well for people in my orbit. And I like to think that, I have found my life's work, and I started pretty early. And it's just the beginning.
Well, where did you grow up? Like, if someone says, where are you actually from? Is it just everywhere? What was home for you as a kid?
Yeah, I grew up in a small town in northern China. It's called Dongying, and it's a very young city, the youngest city in China. It was founded 7 years before I was born because they discovered an oil field there. So my middle school and high school, I kid you not, the name of my school is Shengli Oil Field Number One Middle School. So most people are like, "What are you talking about?" Yeah, so I grew up there until I was 18, and then I came to the US for college.
Wow. And did you always have aspirations of being a business owner and being somebody that was the catalyst for change and empowerment for underfunded women?
No, I think it was something that I organically came across. Actually, by accident, because I had no intention of becoming an investor. I had no intention of becoming an entrepreneur. My dream was to really run a global brand under something like L'Oreal or, Unilever, because I loved the world of, how business and brands could change, consumer behaviors, social perceptions of certain issues and create change on a large scale, and become, household names and that, generations can grow up with. So that's what I was really passionate about. But yeah, because of some, immigrant visa stuff, I actually had to quit my corporate job then and start my master's degree in entrepreneurship and innovation, which was not something I was, that interested in. I thought it was something very distant and far away from where I was at in my life. I was so young. But after getting into the program, I became so fascinated that, within 3 months, I started SoGal on campus to support other women entrepreneurs because I always felt kind of isolated and alone as an Asian woman in that classroom, in the entrepreneurship system in LA. And then I realized that, wow, like only 2% of venture capital funding went to women entrepreneurs. So I am not crazy in experiencing this kind of, isolation or feeling like I don't belong. So that's where SoGal began. And one thing led to another. It went from a community with a lot of, high impact events to a venture capital fund, to now we have over, I think, about $60 million under management, with, a powerful global network of entrepreneurs, VCs, and LPs.
Wow. It's powerful, and again, I'm a pretty ignorant guy, and I feel like I use my ignorance sometimes as a weapon, unintentionally. But yeah, women-led companies are so investable, and unfortunately, it's just the statistics are not in their favor. But you joined this journey 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, and what changes have you seen? Maybe even the last few years alone, whether it's with funding or with exits and you mentioned 5 unicorns that you're a part of, but what kind of changes have you noticed on that front since you decided to really be a part of the forefront of the mission?
Yeah, I think on a macro level, if we look at the 2% number, right, when I started back in 2014, 15, it was 2.2%. And the last 2 years, because of the market is not being, too optimistic, that number actually dropped to about 1.9%, depending on what data sources you look at. So on a macro scale, it could be pretty depressing. Like 10 years have passed, the number has not changed. But on a micro level, from, our own vantage point and day-to-day experience, we've been able to see incredible transformations in our in the circles near us. So with the SoGal funds alone, we've been able to support 45 companies with SoGal Fund 1 and 2. And these companies created a total of over $1 billion in revenue in the past few years. And that is over 1 billion in revenue annually, not combined. So that's pretty insane. And these entrepreneurs have been able to raise, I think, over $1 billion as well. And this is, traditionally very underfunded groups of people. They are Latina founders, Asian founders, Black founders, and most of them are women. So these are, we see headlines where, only, I think, 48 Latina founders have ever raised over $1 million, and similar stats for Black women founders. But in our ecosystem, we're just seeing, our entrepreneurs breaking those records or becoming part of history. And so I think that gives me a lot of hope. And we've been able to just see tremendous impacts that we've been able to create, even with, not so huge of a fund. But our 40-ish companies add up to almost $8 billion in market value. And that is huge. And they've created over 3,000 jobs. And, we play in the US and global economy with our still pretty humbly sized funds. So I think that gives me a lot of hope. And the fact that we've been able to get on board like over 200 LPs who, many of whom never invested in venture capital, never were invited to the table for this asset class. And now they're part of it. They are lending their expertise and networks into this big mission. So that's something I'm extremely proud of. And another kind of side effect is because we started this fund when we were very young with no clear track record or financial experience or, anything that people would think, oh, that will make you a good VC. Like we had none of that. So the fact that we were able to raise a fund, make it, and get in the headlines, we have directly and indirectly inspired so many other women and underrepresented groups to become fund managers, angels and LPs and VCs. So I think, give us another few decades, we will definitely see even more significant changes on a systematic level.
Wow. So talk about the process, right? And again, you go on a TV show and your inbox is probably going to get even more crowded. Is there a blessing and a curse to being this force of strength for females and female founders? Because you obviously can't say yes to everybody, right? And I feel like that's a hard part about what I'm doing now is that I'll respond to every email and every pitch, but rarely is it we're going to do it. So how do you go and still be true to yourself and be this genuine, loving, kind person that has this inner desire to really make change, but still be a business owner?
Yeah, from the get-go, we were only a team of two, and we remained a team of two for many, many years. So we know how to, do a lot with very little. And I think when people think of investing in women, they're like, oh, you're facing a very limited pool of deals. But quite the opposite. We see so many amazing deals that we barely scratch the surface, right? And we don't have enough time to take all the first calls. So I think one of our hacks is that we actually notoriously don't take a lot of first calls until we've felt a strong, attraction to this problem, or to the founder, or we have already done some research or know that this is a problem we want to, get involved with. That's when we start taking first calls and digging in. And I think that's a great hack. And yeah, the other day I met this woman entrepreneur at an event, and she was asking for advice, and I get this a lot, right? And I was telling her, just because I run a VC fund and we met here today doesn't mean I'm going to be the most helpful person to you. And, sometimes the helpful connection comes from very unexpected places. It might not be the most famous or, seemingly most well-connected person that you meet. It could be a random person, right? It could be a friend of a friend who totally, out of the blue, knows someone who might be interested in your idea. So I think I tell people, just connect with a lot of people and tell everyone what you're trying to do and see what comes out, because luck is, showing up at the right place at the right time, meeting the right person. But to be able to do that, you have to show up everywhere all the time. And meet everyone. So I think it's really a numbers game, and I tell that to people. Yeah.
It's hard, I think it's hard. It's hard. You're a founder yourself. I'm a founder myself too. And trying to find time to relax. I don't, a question I used to ask people on this that it was always the same answer, but I'll ask you, is there such thing as balance when it comes to being a successful founder?
Yes and no. I used to think the answer is no, but now I think yes, there is balance, and I think you have to manufacture that balance. You can't just expect it to happen. And for me, my romantic partner is a great balance for me. She will be like, you've been working too hard. Like you have to take a break, and today you're not working. So I get that very fortunately, and I I do believe that I'm the kind of person that have, periodic, very high energy, very high vibration, um, uh, kind of intense um, few weeks or something, and then I need to take a break. So I understand how I work, and I understand, what kind of things can help relax me. So I make sure to plan, massages here and there if I need to, and um, take a walk by the water when I need to. But I could also be super workaholic. Like I was on this 14-hour flight and I closed 200K on the plane with the in-flight Wi-Fi. So yeah, it's hard to say. I don't think it comes every day, but I make sure that the balance is there periodically.
Huh. It's hard, yeah. And even then, like the way my brain thinks is like if you're going to go get a massage, like what we do for the most part is consumer. There might be something at the spa that I like. It's like you're probably never not working. It's just I'm never not working. It's just sometimes I'm in an environment that forces me to kind of calm down and be more present. But that's the fun part about what we get to do is that there's always something that you could be considering. Maybe it's not a pitch, maybe it is, but yeah. With that being said, like when you think about all the companies you've been a part of, do you remember the very first one where you just felt like convicted, like we're going to invest in this? Do you remember what your first deal was?
Ooh, so before we had Fund One, I had made some angel investments to experiment. My first angel check was $1,000 into an AI company back in 2015. But I think the first company that we had strong conviction in as a team for SoGal is our first investment in Fund One, Function of Beauty, and in that was we invested in it first thing when we had the first close of maybe, just a little over $1 million. We immediately invested in this company. And the company wasn't even raising. Like we kind of, got our way into the cap table by convincing the founder to open a round for us. But that was 2017, January. And by Q4 2020, this company became our first $1 billion company in the SoGal portfolio. So it was a great, conviction that turned out to be accurate. But I think our superpower is we kind of can foresee what's coming for the younger generation, and that's our whole thesis. So with Function of Beauty, it was all about personalization. It's all about acknowledging the diversity in the people. And it used to be, personal care was one size fits all. Like you have beautiful hair, like you go to the grocery store and the supermarket, you look at all these, seemingly different options, but if you look at the formulations, they're pretty much exactly the same. But we have all different hair types and everything. So we thought if a company is really able to cater to all these different hair types and different hair needs and can tackle multiple needs at a time instead of only, volume or smooth or shine. Like, why do you have to choose between those? So yeah, we thought that was the future of consumer behavior, and we made that bet early on, and then it became a leader in personalization of personal care.
Wow. So you look back and you said your funds have done over 60 investments, right?
So the two SoGal funds have done I think 46 actually, 46 total investments.
So almost 50. And you've probably seen everything, right? From diamonds to furniture to healthcare to AI. But is there something that you're still waiting for that you would quietly be really excited to get pitched? Is there like a thing or a service or a vertical that you have not been able to invest in yet?
Yeah, one such thing is, how can how can I have an easier time being a global citizen? Like, for example, like just everywhere I go with a Chinese passport, I have to apply for a visa. Like so much so that my passport just ran out of space, and I still have 3 more years to go until the passport expires. But that's how much, I needed to apply for visas every time I go somewhere, which is so not efficient. And I've never, overstayed my welcome. I've never done anything to, break any laws or anything. So like I thought blockchain technology was able to create this kind of global access or global identity where, if you're a good person, like, and you travel quite often, then you don't have to go through so much trouble. But yeah, I have a decade of immigrant, not horror stories, but, like challenging stories, which is not very productive for my life. So that's something that I'm definitely interested in. And then I think when it comes to health and wellness, I'm continuing to look for companies that could really personalize, consumerize um, healthcare, because I think, that is something that has been done one way, and a lot of the, you know, uh, by default, how things are done are not at all, the golden standard, really. Like if we look back on how these standards were created or who were the people behind it, you will be stunned by how insane or how unreasonable or how unreliable that was. So I'm really looking forward to investing in companies that help shed a light on that, creates, new breakthrough ways of understanding healthcare and making it accessible to people who were underserved. Like a quick example is that, women have always experienced like PMS, but only until like less than 10 years ago, the medical society realized that PMS could be as severe or as painful as a heart attack, and that it causes deaths, and that it causes serious consequences. But for the longest time, it's like, oh, if you're on your period and you complain about a pain, you're just being fragile. So even just the definition of pain and how women's description of pain was not believed in for the longest time. Like all these things are fuels for me to invest in fields like that.
What advice would you give to somebody? So 10 years ago, you're starting your journey. Maybe there's a female founder watching today. Maybe there's a male founder watching today. Maybe it's somebody that wants to start a fund. What advice would you give to somebody on the fund side? And then what advice would you give to somebody on the founder side?
So much I can talk for hours. um, but overall, I think, if you have a strong mission that you believe in, really find a way to make it work. And sometimes we feel like, it's too far away, or I don't see a way of creating that. So I hope, stories like mine, and I've been inspired by many other people in many different fields that have done the seemingly impossible things, um, to really, see that anything is possible, and you just really need to throw yourself into it. And I would say start early. I think one big advantage of starting in my early 20s was that I have so little to lose. I don't have a high paying job, that was the alternative that I had to give up. And the first few years of running a small fund, the economics for the fund managers suck. So, for a few years, you might not be able to pay yourself or support a family if you have one. So I think being an entrepreneur, like time is on your side. So the earlier you get that experience, the earlier you can become a serial entrepreneur, and the earlier you realize, all these things are learnable, and your risk appetite is higher when you're younger. So I think that's one piece of advice. Um, and the second thing is, I would say, like, really approach it from a holistic standpoint and believe in your unique leadership. One mistake I see in a lot of women founders or, male founders who come from underrepresented backgrounds, um, are that is that they want to do what everyone else does. Like they want to show up at every event, even though they're huge introverts, or they they people please, or they are huge night owls, but they try to make it to early morning meetings every day and try to get to the office every day at 7 a.m. Like that's not sustainable. So I think really think about creating human sustainability within yourself and for your team. Um, Create something that works for you, and try to learn more about yourself and discover what makes you comfortable, like what makes it authentically you. And I think that's the most attractive to people that you want to attract.
What's the kiss of death? What's the thing that you immediately say no to? Like, is there a trait you see with founders that, like whether it's ego or it's, they're not on time, or maybe that they're not open to suggestion, valuation is too high. What's the one thing that you see and you're just like immediately, not attracted to the deal?
Great question. One example I'm thinking of was, a few years ago, there wasn't a company I was initially interested in. So I asked for some product samples, and these are, like small, little, not so expensive products. So they shipped some to me, and I think in 2 weeks or something, I decided that this is actually not a fit. So I told them that in an email, and they were basically saying that, oh, like you totally wasted our time, and like we shouldn't have sent you the products. Then, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. How they see kind of interactions as purely, kind of a one-way street and more transactional. I think they kind of lost a great opportunity to either look for feedback or, to end on a good note. Like, who knows, our paths will cross again. And, yeah, so I thought that was not very wise. Yeah, so I think approaching with an open heart, is always a good idea.
I agree. Yeah. Again, people, it's expensive to be a founder, and you got to send product out and let people experience it. And I've had a few where I got an invoice after they sent me something like really small. I was like, okay, that's kind of awkward, but I kind of appreciated it, but also was a little bit thrown off. So talk about your legacy. Again, you're still so young, and you have so much to do, but you're on this mission to really impact females and founders and the environment in general. But what legacy do you hope to leave, once your career is maybe on the other side of you?
I think the SoGal spirit is very much transferable to other industries. So I always like to see other people doing similar to what we're doing, but in other spaces. For example, I have a friend who was, my first batch of SoGal volunteers when I just started at USC. And then as I started SoGal after graduation, after she graduated, she started an art gallery that's supporting emerging artists, diverse artists, who, traditionally didn't get the love of the blue chip museums and galleries. So I love seeing kind of, similar ideas pop up in, different worlds that we interact with as individuals. And I think we are pioneering a new way of getting business done, coming from a place of human connection, coming from, a shared love for this planet we live on, and a shared mission of, creating fundamental changes, creating new categories, changing people's minds, and creating more love and kindness in this world. and making finance less boring and cutthroat, but more, how do we truly create a win-win-win-win-win all around kind of situation? And how do we, through investing in small startups, to change the DNA of the future of business, so that, we together live in a happier, more abundant society, and we protect our planet Earth better, and we, have a sense of community around us, and have more, better intergenerational relationships and feel, more healed. So I feel like that's what I'm trying to do. And
You're doing
that's the
it.
message we
You're,
spread.
yeah, you're good for any environment. You're such a kind person that, you bring the best out in people. And I feel like that's what a great founder does, but it's what a really great investor does. And, like I said at the beginning, a lot of investors just write a check and hope that it works, but you're involved and you're not doing it just because of the financial outcome. Like your heart is to empower females. And obviously by proxy, that's going to impact men too. But yeah, your genuine approach is contagious, and that's why when I first met you, I was like, man, I really want to be friends with you, and I've learned a lot from you, and excited to continue the journey. But yeah, from one founder to another, I'm a fan of what you're doing, and your impact is immeasurable. So thank you for
Thank you.
just doing it the right way. Yeah.
Thank you. No, I
Last,
mean, like,
yeah.
you were so kind, like, this whole time, ever since the elevator pitch show came along. And I think I just really, really appreciate not only you reaching out, but just, immediately becoming very warm and very friendly. And yeah, I feel like you and I totally hit on that. Like, we just met, but we have the best intentions for each other and we want to support each other kind of vibes. So yeah, I think
That's
you're definitely on
that's how
that, in that same
it,
orbit.
well, and I appreciate that, but unfortunately, that shouldn't be rare, and I feel like that's why I work as hard as I do. Is that it shouldn't be rare that people are kind and they're friendly and they want to help. Like that's how the world should work, And I feel like there's industries that are not really accustomed to it, but I do feel like that's part of the legacy I want to leave. Is that success can make you a better person, and the whole premise of this podcast is that just because you've been successful and you've made money doesn't mean you have to be a sellout. And I would, I lived on this island for a long time with kind of what I did during my first part of my career. And I was really lonely. And I just didn't think that other people like me existed in the leadership space. And I went on this journey that, it led me to you and it led me to the TV show. It led me to the podcast. And, I like learning and I didn't think that I did. So yeah, listen, I'm grateful. I got to ask you one more question, and then you can go to sleep because now it's almost 11 o'clock over where you're at. What's the best way to support you? Your website, your social media, like what's the best way to actually be a supporter of, the mission that you're on?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I encourage anyone to connect with me on LinkedIn. That's where I usually post a lot of portfolio companies updates. And another way is to connect with me on Instagram, Pocket Y Sun. I post more stories than I actually publish posts, but you can learn a lot about what I invest in, what I'm up to, on Instagram as well. What else? Think of us whenever there's a potential investor around. We are constantly looking for people who are aligned with our philosophy to, co-create this bigger than us legacy. However, we will be closing this fund in less than 20 days. So yeah, if this podcast is published after November 10th, then we will be taking introductions for Fund 3, which will be probably in a few years. But I always love meeting people who are interested in what we're doing. And it's an ever evolving story.
I love it. Well, I'm proud to know you. I'm a proud fan and friend and investor, and just love your energy and how kind you are, and yeah, just grateful that we finally were able to do this. So thanks for everything.
No, thank you, Rogers. Thanks for inviting me and being part of our SoGal universe.